All right, Member Miller, what we will note is that you were online when the meeting started, but you recused yourself for the discussion. So the minutes will be corrected to reflect that.
Thank you, Sir Chair.
Okay. Let me welcome Madam Permanent Secretary and your team from the Ministry of Tourism and TPDCO. Let me also welcome back the Auditor General. And Madam Permanent Secretary, I just ask you to introduce yourself and the team members who are here with you. Is the mic on? Just check if it's working. No? No, we need some help to just, it should be plugged into one of the things there. Check it again. No?
Good morning, Chair.
Yeah.
Good morning, Chair and members of the PAC. Good morning to our colleagues from the Auditor General Department. I'm Jennifer Griffith, PAC in the Ministry of Tourism, and with me are Mr. Wade Mars, Executive Director of the Tourism Product Development Company, Mrs. Kimberly Evans, Director of Special Projects, Mrs. Erica Brown-Whittingham, Executive Human Resource Manager, Mr. Ovell Brown, Financial Controller, Mrs. Donna Johnson-Fowler, she's the Director of Public Procurement, and Mrs. Georgia Robinson, Director of Corporate Services. Chairman, the Executive Director of TPDCO is relatively new, so we felt it was important to carry the full technical team who would have had responsibility for the various areas on the examination this morning. We did submit...
Wait, just before you go ahead, I'm just going to ask the Auditor General to introduce her team, and then we can go into the details. Madam Auditor General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I have with me today, to my left, Christopher Hare, Audit Principal, Gail Lou Lim, Deputy Auditor General, Samantha Hannum, Chantel Rookwood, members of the audit team. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Blake.
Morning, Chairman, committee members. Hope Blake, Deputy Financial Secretary, Minister of Finance and the Public Service. And I have with me Barrington Thomas, Senior Director from the Ministry.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the Auditor General to give a brief overview, and then Madam PS, you can respond, and then we can go into the details after that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning again, everyone. The audit sought... I'm hearing a feedback.
I think we're good now. Go ahead.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Right, so the audit sought to assess the adequacy of TPDCO systems of internal control and the contract management for the tourism projects under its purview over the review period. As indicated, we were satisfied with the governance structure in place at TPDCO. However, we noted that there was room for improvement with the human resources activities and performance reporting, more from the backdrop of the need to have feasibility studies done for the projects, and as well as an indication as to how the projects are actually selected for implementation. And that, by and large, were the main findings, Mr. Chairman. The prompt was circulated, and you will see that there are 5 issues, 5 broad issues. 3 of those issues we believe have been addressed to our satisfaction, and you'll see that it is indicated as resolved. The others, which TPDCO has undertaken to address, we have stated there that we will keep it in view because we would need to do assessment at a later date to determine the effectiveness of the measures taken by TPDCO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Madam Auditor General. Let me welcome, I see online Member Charles and Member Chin. So let me welcome you, and feel free, if you want to intervene, just to use the raise hand button on the computer. Madam PS, I'll invite you to provide a response.
Thank you, Chair. As the AG said, TPDCO basically has all the systems in place. TPDCO, as an organization, is well structured. It has its departments with a clear mandate. It has internal auditors, and the senior technical team who are very clear on their various responsibilities. The projects that the AG mentioned, I'm going to ask if you ask specific questions, AG, or if you want to just go through the report.
Well, what we'll do, PS,
So let us
after your
see how
overview, members will have specific questions, either based on the prompt or on the report itself that they will ask. So unless you have any further remarks which are general, then I would invite members to go through. But if you want to add just general remarks,
Yes.
you can do so.
Yes, Chair. Just to say that TPDCO acknowledges that there were, in fact, some areas of weaknesses, despite the fact that overall they carried their mandate well. We did note and agree with the AG that there are some areas of weakness, and since that, TPDCO, well, they have been trying to improve their systems, and since the report, they have taken it even further. So throughout the report, you will see the responses to the various points raised, and this explanation and the course of action that the organization is undertaking to correct where weaknesses remain. So with that, we will respond to particular questions. And the technical team are here so they can respond in their respective areas of responsibility.
All right, thank you, PS. I'll invite members if there are specific questions. Welcome, Member Holness. Specific questions members want to ask of the team? Yes, Member Sibley.
Thank you, Chair. I want to congratulate the TPDCO being part of the Ministry of Tourism, and I can't help but to see the great strides that the Minister of Tourism has been making, and I'm sure TPDCO plays an equal part in that. So I want to thank you for the work that you have put in. With regards to your financials, there is the issue 5 on the Auditor General's prompt. I'm not sure if you have the Auditor General's prompt, the latest prompt. Madam AG, you know if it was circulated, or the Chair, you know if it was circulated to...
Do you have the Auditor General's prompt, which has the 5 issues and the status of the... Well, okay, so issue 5 relates to the not submitting financial reports for the period 2018-19 to 20... We can share it because I think we have copies here that members are not using. So let's just share the copies so you can be following with us.
Can we have another thing? We share and we'll share with them.
Issue 5 is at the back of the prompt.
The prompt to the back
reference
is
The
on
last
page 11.
Page 11. Okay. Let me speak with respect to the.
Hold on, Pierce. You have asked your question, Member Siblings?
No, I've not
All
asked the
right, hold
question.
on, Pierce. I just want to ensure you're following us.
Yeah.
The issues would have been in the overall report, you know. So they're not necessarily new, but the prompt would highlight it. But go ahead, Member Siblings.
Thank you, Chair. First, is TPDCO required to have an external auditor to audit its financials? Or is it the Auditor General's department that audit the financials?
External auditors.
Who are your auditors? Eh?
Oh, C.R. Hilton and Associates, sorry.
Oh, okay, very well.
Those are the current auditors. Prior to that, it would have been PwC.
Yep. Can you just help us to understand whether or not the financials are with the auditors, those that are outstanding? Are they with the auditors, or just give us a time when they will be ready and submitted to the auditors for their review?
So this speaks specifically to the annual reports, but with respect to the audited financials, we can say that 2018, 2019 is currently ready and available, including the annual report itself that has been printed. With respect to 2019, 2020, an initial draft financial report was done. However, there are a few changes that are being made. That is expected to be ready within I would say 2 months or so. And 2020, 2021, that a first draft is currently being done. 21, 22 would not have started yet.
Thank you.
Member Holness, you have a question? And then Member Guy.
CEO, I know you're new, but PS, what could have contributed to the delay in having these done? Because usually they are done within, say, 6 months after the close of the financial year. And it's not a situation where the AG's department is tasked with too much work. You have external auditors and you pay them. Why is it that it has taken so long?
Yes. Thanks for that question, Member. In fact, TPDCO used to be one of a star public body in terms of completing the reports on time. But I think it was as far back as 2015-16, the reports for that year, there were a number of challenges with reconciliation because there were many projects between TPDCO and the Tourism Enhancement Fund. And there were some issues with the project management aspects, the payment aspects, and it took a while to have all issues resolved. And then TEF would have done their annual reports on time, and so the TPDCO reports now had to match with the TEF figures, and so they had to make sure that all of the schedules were reviewed carefully to ensure that the project management issues were all resolved, the various projects with the different parties were resolved, and it took a little while for that to be resolved. But once that happened and the process was completed, then TPDCO went through some management changes as well, and that slowed it down a bit. But they have since stepped up very much so, and we were able to submit the 17-18 and the 18-19, which is now which was now completed. In fact, it's with the ministry now. We're doing the cabinet note to go to cabinet, so that will go to cabinet within a week. And as Mr. Mars indicated, they are well advanced with the next 2 outstanding reports. So they have made significant improvement, and we're satisfied that by the end of the of the period indicated, they will be fully compliant with respect to their annual report requirements.
Just out of curiosity, though, PS, you mentioned that there are some management changes. Would it have affected the accounts or the internal auditing department of TPDCO? Those management changes. Just asking.
We have had changes in ED, for example.
Yeah, I know, the
Executive
ED,
Director.
yes, but I'm referring to the accounting and the auditing areas of TPDCO. You mentioned there are management changes. I want to know if the changes affected those areas or it was just the ED.
There would have been you want to say something?
Well, specifically, remember during that particular, not remember, sir, but during that particular period, we also changed auditors. So that would have also caused some amount of challenge in terms of getting the thing done. What I can say, though, is that from our standpoint, we're really looking to get this thing wrapped up in very short order. In a previous life, I was in a capacity that I understood the seriousness of financial reporting, and we plan to carry that right through here.
Now speak in the mic, Member Holness.
I'm asking, what was the reason for the change in your external auditors? Was it a regular rotation required just to maintain independence? Was there any issue with your previous external auditors? Were they involved in bidding to continue as external auditors? Because I'm not so sure who your new auditors are, but the name PricewaterhouseCoopers is one that is substantial. So I'm trying to figure out what would have resulted in the change from a PricewaterhouseCoopers to an auditor. What's the name of the auditor again?
CRH Hilton.
CRH Hilton, which sounds almost like a smaller, entity. Let's put it that way.
It would be a normal competitive process in terms of, competitive bidding, that sort of thing. Pricewaterhouse has a price tag attached to them.
I would think Pricewaterhouse also has a quality attached to them. So I'm asking again, I want to make sure in terms of the service that we're receiving, the quality of the external audit and the vigorousness and the timeliness, especially when you're in a situation where your financial statements and the audit of those financial statements are falling behind. I am asking that question because one would wonder if it could have resulted from a change in your external auditors as well. That's what I'm wondering.
No, the delay would have occurred from the time period with right. Pricewaterhouse. So we can't necessarily start, for example, 2017, 2018 before finalizing 2016, 2017. And also before 2016, 2017, you'd have to also finalize 2015, 2016. So that delay would not have been as a result of our current auditors.
When were they changed?
The exact date for the change.
Sometime during the 16-17 year, you understand. And of course, I've gone through procurement process, and I think it was sometime during 2016, I think. 16, 17? 16. And the start. And of course, there had been a procurement process, and I think during that time too, the accountant, there was a change in the accountant, so that delayed the process somewhat. So it would have been his internal staff matters plus the changes. So it wouldn't be the auditor's fault per se, member. Would have been the auditors. We have had no problem with the auditors themselves. Any change would have been a normal process of going back to tender after a period of time and for it to be a competitive process. So there was no issue with the auditors themselves. It's the organization's ability to put together the schedules and so forth in time for the audits to happen. And as I said, the problem they had in that year, it delayed everything, and they had to sort all of that out before they could move forward.
1 second, member. How long are the auditors contracted for?
The new auditors.
It's
3
a
years.
3-year period, and then you go to tender at the end of a 3-year period. Okay.
Yes, Chair.
So the CR Hilton would have been contracted in what year?
2016, 2017. Well, they started doing the 2016, 2017 financials.
Yes, they came on 27. We're told that they were brought on 2017.
So they would have gone through another tender process because they're still your external auditors.
Right.
So they would have finished in about 2020, and then they would have been successful in that competitive bid that you would have done for them to continue.
That is my understanding.
All right, Madam AG, just maybe you could guide us. Is there a standard for public bodies in terms of the length of period that they engage their external auditors? Right, I know. That's why I asked you to.
That was a discussion we were having across the floor.
I cannot speak to it definitively. I do know that there is a standard bidding for 3 years. We do the same thing when we outsource our contracts. We do it for a 3-year stint. However, it does not preclude the re-engagement of that auditor, because I think there are two things at play. There is the need to maintain independence and objectivity, which is why you would have rotation, but it's important to state that that is not in our rules as Public Accountancy Board and the ICAJ rules. So it's more about our procurement practices to put it to tender every 3 years.
I think to add to what you said, AG, and maybe you could check for us, you know, I think there was a circular or something that came out which requires agencies to change their audit, to tender, not to change the auditor, to put to tender that function, that external function. However, if the same auditors bid and would have been successful, that they rotate the in-charge partner. So there wasn't any rules that you couldn't continue with the same auditor, but you could, even where the firm continues for more than 5 years, the rule was to change, partners were to be rotated every 5 years. But
I'm not aware of that, but I do recall something coming out a couple of years ago, so I'll just do a little research on it.
But Chair, to follow up on this question, I noted that the TPDCO team had put that they expect the financials to be up to date by July 2022. I wonder if there's a realistic timetable. And I put it to the ED, who said in another life, he understands this, and you know, many of us have other lives. And the date in terms of what is outstanding to be audited, you know, is not just to complete the financials, but I think the AG wants to ensure that we have audited financials, because one thing when we do our accounts and our financials, well, the annual report cannot come out without the financials, right? And I am thinking that most of the time our annual reports are delayed because the financials are not ready, and I don't see any director or any ED or chairman that can write any qualitative report without the quantitative analysis being there.
Member,
so is July, I'm asking, is this a realistic date that, you know, because I'm sure the AG is going to call upon you come July.
Sir, we're going to put forward our best efforts to meet the deadline that is outlined here.
Mr. Edie, I want to shift a little to project management because you manage a plethora of projects, not just in constituencies, but across the country. What is the capacity, both in terms of personnel, numbers, and skills level within the organization to oversee the multitude of projects that you currently manage?
Sir, I would say that we have one of the most equipped technical teams for any government agency. Ms. Evans can speak specifically to the different team members in the different capacities, both in our Kingston office as well in our Montego Bay office, if you want, like detailed numbers of quantity surveyors, engineers, civil, otherwise, architects, etc. Is that?
So you're satisfied with both the complement and the qualitative side of the personnel you have to manage the projects?
Well, there are one or two vacancies, but I am satisfied that we have adequate numbers to do the projects that we are currently tasked to do.
Member Guy?
Edie,
yes, sir.
I just heard your comments, and whereas I'm very happy that you have indicated you have such a competent team and you're happy and satisfied with what you have. But are you saying therefore that when you juxtapose that against issue number 4, where the AG had some serious concerns about employment without adequate qualification?
Sorry.
Without adequate qualification, then are you saying therefore that you are also satisfied with those as well?
Sir, when you say issue number 4,
on the same prompt, the prompt?
Same prompt.
Page 10.
Just page 10, okay. All right, specifically, okay. I don't believe any of the technical staff in the projects department were highlighted in this report. Am I wrong?
Hold on. Chairman.
We have some concerns as it relates to issue 4, but to member, the project's team wasn't identified in the detailed report in terms of their technical competence.
Coming to that.
Employment, but we do have some concerns with not adhering to your own employment process.
So let me ask the other part of the question now, Edie. Are you saying to this committee, therefore, that all that grouping that you have in terms of competency are adequately qualified for the roles that they have in the technical team?
Please repeat.
Are you saying,
sure.
Therefore, that
Which
all the...
Which grouping are you speaking to specifically, sir? That's my...
You asked the question to be repeated. I'm going to.
Member.
Are you therefore saying that all the persons you have in the technical team have the adequate qualifications for the competency that you spoke to about a while ago?
That is my understanding.
That's your understanding. So you said that is correct. Because your understanding could be different from exactly what obtains.
Well, I'm speaking specifically to the projects team, which was what the original question referred to.
And you are saying that they're adequately qualified for the projects team then?
Yes, sir. That is my understanding.
All right.
That was our understanding as well. So we note that for the most part, the detailed list of employees, and where we saw several instances of persons not having the requisite qualification for the positions that they were placed in. Many of those individuals were promoted through the organization. Some of those persons would have been employed, not meeting in our estimation, the matriculation requirement for the job. Sometimes with gaps as far as you, from your own SOP and policy, saying that someone needs to have a master's degree, but yet still employing someone who doesn't even have a bachelor's degree. So those areas of concern, and we notice in terms of the prompt, you haven't really resolved. Even from observing the responses, you're working on it. So we have seen individuals who are now pursuing their studies to get up to scratch. I remember one individual has not even enrolled in an institution. So I would love to know how you are planning to resolve it. I'll ask that first, and then I have a follow-up question, because I do also have some concerns about the policy itself and whether or not you think the policy is serving the institution in the way that it should.
Thank you for that question, member. What we have is a situation where, well, each individual case is different, but in many instances, there were people who have been with the organization for a lengthy period of time. We would have observed them working in the different areas. They would have proven themselves doing various projects and or tasks and duties that showed that they had the capacity to do the roles assigned, even though the qualifications on paper were not there. What I've said, or in terms of our internal discussions, what we have to now do is in a sense rationalize where experience, certain years of experience, especially within the organization, counts for something outside of just what you get on paper from the university. But it's a challenge, and also part of the challenge too is finding people with the right mix of skill sets, that they have postgraduate education, but yet still do they have the experience in the area that will allow them to do the task in the task that we're speaking about. And then when you even get those two things together, are we offering a competitive compensation?
Well,
Forget this mic is not working. We definitely want to ask you all of that, because we are always concerned when there is an appearance of any form of, I wouldn't want to go so deep with that word, I need to find another word. The word I have in my head is too strong. But we need to be comfortable that you are making the effort to stick to the policies that you have established. And when I looked at your situation and looked at the responses, I am wondering if you don't need to go back to your policy. Because insisting that someone needs a master's degree, if you are not paying at the requisite level for someone with a master's degree with experience, you're never going to get any. And you're always going to be in a position. And yes, I listened to Member Sibley's when he started. We are mindful. You have been performing very well. We see our numbers going up. We see our income going up. We know that the institution is doing well. But we don't want to be in a position where it gives the appearance to the public that you are not making an effort to conform to policy. So I saw Member Sibley's put up his hand. I heard him whisper to me earlier. I wonder if they're doing performance appraisal on these persons. That was his question. And I want you to help us to appreciate that we do have the best team of people right across the board, and you do not have concerns about any one individual who does not meet the requisite qualification. My concern is about the one individual I saw who didn't even enroll in an institution. So if you don't care to even enroll to try and build yourself up in terms of your capability and qualification, yes, experience counts for a lot, especially in the institution, doing the work over and over, being in the group of people you learn across the board. But I would hope that the individuals have that motivation and drive to still enroll and try to build their educational background as an individual, because it can only augur better for the organization. It must add something.
Just before you answer, I was a little concerned with your response, because I am more concerned about process and policy and ensuring that we stick to process and policy and not use exceptions as the norm. And one of the questions I have is, I wanted you to outline how the persons who didn't have the minimum qualifications, how they were recruited into the organization in the first place. I have an appreciation of someone who is in a job, being promoted, may not have the qualifications, and is urged to undertake the qualifications. But in cases where someone is brought into a position that requires a master's degree and only has CXCs, how would that person have been brought in to the organization? What process would have been followed for that person to have passed the different layers? And that's the first part. And then what is being done to correct it so that we don't have more of those situations?
Chair.
You know, and then I recognize Member Sibley's and Member Wilson.
So, Chairman, you want me to speak generally, or you want me to speak specifically to a particular case?
Well, the AG's report highlighted, I think, about 8 or 9. Now, it may have predated you because I know you're new, but there's a team that is here. So I just want for the committee to understand how the process that those persons would have been employed for those persons to be hired. So if you don't know, maybe the other members of your team may be able to assist. Because if we don't know, we won't know how to correct what would have been obviously a problem.
All right, I'll ask Mrs. Brown-Whittingham to respond.
Thank you very much, Edie. Good morning, everybody. I'm answering the member's question on PMAS. I heard that question first. Performance appraisal. Did I hear that one first?
That was a question that we want to ask you and to develop on as well. But since you're going to answer that question, might I, Chair, just...
Right.
Allow her to answer and then we'll have the full. For me, I want to understand the process. That those persons who were brought on board, what was that process?
Okay, member. The TPDCO prides itself in making the process competitive, so all the positions were advertised. We also noted that for the particular reference in the report, that person was already on board and worked their way up in the organization. So we gauged this performance on not only the PMAS, but the person's proven ability to complete the task that they were employed so to do. So they went through the interview process like all other members of the team, and they were selected based on their abilities, based on their experience, and they were on board.
So for all 8 of the examples identified by the Auditor General, these are persons who were already on staff. None of them was new, being brought into the organization for the first time. Is that what you're saying?
That's very correct, member.
Okay. And in the case, as Member Holness said, of persons who have not made an attempt to bring themselves up to that qualification, 3, what is being done to those persons?
Okay, the TPDCO has embarked on a qualification campaign, not just for these persons, but for all persons who are looking to grow within the organization. So we are encouraging these people not through punitive measures, but through gentle suasion to get up to date with these qualifications, and the organization would have helped these team members where the certification that is needed is one that is quickly attained. Then the organization helps in terms of our training plans, as well as we encourage persons and we seek reports on their performance where there is a first degree or a postgraduate degree that is needed. So we are encouraging these team members actively to get these done.
But what happens in a case, and we have 3, where the person has not made an attempt or has begun to bring their qualifications up to scratch? We see 5 others who have started, no issue, but suppose the person decides they're not going to even attempt to do it. What do? You continue to keep them on board and pay them the same salary and everything else?
We still are working with them, Chairman, until we would have seen that they have no interest in this regard.
You have 3 unenrolled persons. One of them is from like 2005.
Right.
So I would love to understand if from 2005 to the present, those individuals, you have 3 persons not enrolled, have they made any effort at all to show that there is some interest in furthering their education?
At this point, the one for 2005 has gone back to complete the education. There are 2 that we have. We're still working on a degreed program for them, but they have been looking at certification programs in their respective areas.
So when you included in your report, you should have included that little bit, because when we saw that they weren't enrolled, we thought that was just full stop. But this additional information that you are now giving us is much better. But reconcile that for me with the appraisal of those persons who we have. It's a big concern when you have a position and there's one person that requires a master's and we don't see any indication that that person have any qualification per se, anything working up to that per se. But I stand corrected. Just tell us about the appraisal. Were these persons appraised, and what have been the appraisal result of these persons? Because it's one thing to be qualified, but it's the next thing whether or not how you are performing on the job.
All right, so with respect to some of the individuals, I personally appraised them myself, and other individuals report to other directors. Interestingly, they have acquitted themselves quite well in the different roles, and so even with respect to the appraisal process, for individuals that interact with outside stakeholders, I also solicit feedback from the stakeholders with respect to the responsiveness, the ability to get the jobs done, so to speak. How it is that they're perceived in the industry, that sort of thing, and it has all been positive. So from an appraisal point of view, there is no reason to question whether or not these people are effectively carrying out the functions that are required of the organization.
Hold 1 second, Member Holness. The AG has been wanting to intervene on this matter, so 1 second. Go ahead, AG.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak to a point made by Member Holness with respect to their policy and the fact that they may be shooting themselves in the foot based on the policy that they have. But it's not their policy, you see. Exactly. The Ministry of Finance has a policy, and there is a requirement that the qualification bar must be met. However, the qualification bar is determined by what is in the job description. So it is what TPDCO has included in the job description as the required qualification. And I want to make another point, the final point. I said this when we met the last time for NPL. There's no breach if you put someone to act in a position. Yes? If they are not qualified. The breach occurs when you appoint them to the position. So that acting actually provides the means by which, given a grace period within which the individual can actually undertake the necessary certification process. I think the ideal, what is desired, is that when someone is placed to act, that they are appointed within 6 months. But we know that sometimes they cannot be appointed within that 6-month period because we're giving them time to obtain the requisite qualification.
Madam AG, it is very obvious with persons who are in positions from 2005, we would be in a position that they would be acting for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. In the case of TPDCO, we definitely have a problem. And I would suggest that we have to go back to the drawing board, sit down and work out what is required to run the organization, what the job descriptions need to be for those individuals based on what they're doing, and find a way to get that match with the requisite qualification. Sit back down with the Ministry of Finance and work out what it is going to be for those individuals, because permanent acting as well is something that is unfair to the individual who sits in that position for an extended period, not being able to matriculate to formally taking the position.
Member, I take the suggestion that you've made. We just want to point out, though, that the person in question, even though they were hired by the agency in 2005, it is not that they have been in that position at the time they were hired. So it's not that they were head of.
So, Mr. Mars, you will want to be digging deeper, because then I would ask you, what is the longest serving individual and PSC coming, sitting in the position, not enrolled, not seeking any further qualification? What would be, in your estimation, the longest time anybody has been in that position? So I don't even want you to dig any deeper. I really hope that we will leave this point going off and have the Auditor General come back at some future point to say, I have seen, instead of this nice triangle here, and the prompt gives you an appreciation, I don't feel that we are at a place yet that we can be comfortable with us just keeping it in view. We want to see how we are resolving and reconciling what the organization needs, is doing well with, vis-a-vis what the Ministry of Finance has stipulated as the minimum requirement for government employees.
Thank you very much,
thank
member.
you.
All right, thank you. I have members, one second, member. I have members Wilson, Charles, and Clark. Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. So it's kind of on the same trajectory as Member Holness and the AG, Mr. Wade. My main concern, as it relates to Wade Mars, Mr. Mars, yeah. So my concern is pertaining specifically to the core competencies and qualification, which is oftentimes confused. And from what you're saying, there is a lot of these persons may have the core competencies, but because they are delivering. And from what I've seen so far from the Ministry of Tourism, they have been doing fantastically well. Now, with that being said, it could be that your SOP has to be reviewed because these persons are performing, as you would say, but they don't have the qualifications. So you would have to possibly look at reviewing your SOP, having some consultations to see whether there could be equivalency in how you structure and have your job description laid out. And that could be a suggestion that is taken on. Because if they are performing well, then it would mean that they would have been, have the competence then to deliver in the job functions as it is outlined. And then the other part of the coin is really as it relates to compensation, whether we have these qualifications and person will be able, it will be attractive enough. Because we do know that we are in, the Minister of Finance mentioned recently, we are going to be looking at the salary scale for public sector workers. That could also help. But as is, the AG have found you that based on your SOP, you're basically in a rye of where you should be. So I think that is something that could be looked at. I know some of the employees in Negril, so I know some of the TPDCO employees, and they have been doing great. However, if they don't meet the qualification as required by policy, you will have to really look at how we can address that in the shortest possible term. Thank you.
Thank you, member. And as we take the suggestion, and it's something that we're actively working on in terms of reviewing.
All right.
Just to follow up on that, in terms of recruitment, when you have put out your advertisement for these posts, is it that you guys are getting responses and possibly you could respond to that one in terms of the number of persons who would have been applying for these positions?
And it depends, member, on the position. So we currently now have 2 posts that are skill areas for which we got no response to. So we're looking at capabilities in-house for these persons. But there are others whom we would get 200 responses to, but 198 are not qualified. So we assess in that manner and go back to market where we need to.
All right, Member Charles, then Member Clark.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Member Guy.
As we wrap up the employment discussion, I wanted to ask you if you would consider an education benefit. Because I know sometimes you meet people and they come into your organization and they learn a lot. And they're qualified, but they don't have the degree itself. And a lot of those who have the masters, you can't afford to pay them. So it would be good if you not just help out with the certificate, but offer as a benefit maybe a co-payment plan or something to help them to get that degree.
We can consider expanding the benefit, but we do have benefits in place because you get an educational increment once you would have completed your certification. So we can look at expanding in terms of co-paying. We also offer study leave and time off as part of that education benefit. But in terms of monetary benefits, there is a process where persons are reimbursed for that level of study, yes. Once the Ministry of Finance approves it, then TPDCO reimburses it. And that too is a part of the benefits for persons to go get higher education. So we work with those persons, letting them know what is in it for them.
Okay, so my last statement would be, when you have an employee that you offer so much to, they should be given a certain amount of time and just stick to that so that you do not have to tell us about this next year.
Member Clark. Member Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I would have listened to my colleagues putting questions forward, but at the top of the AG's report, it says project management. What I would ask of Mr. Wade, we are now coming out of the pandemic, so to speak, and we know what it was during those 2 years that tourists, which your agency has responsibility for tourism. Give us a synopsis of what are some major projects that will really draw the country out of where we are and put us back on the map to make us viable.
All right. That one I wasn't really expecting. Yeah, very, very loaded. So what we have in tow for this current financial year. So we have our general.
Water.
I would want to break you from answering that question, Mr. Mars, and just incorporate it in issue 3. I'm going to tell you why, because it's critical. If you at the ministry, particularly TPDCO, already have in place a 5-year strategic plan, it has to be taken in context in how you are going to proceed, even with COVID. Understand? So even with COVID, you must have a strategic direction and mandate. We have already completed our budget for this financial year. So PS, ED, in the context of the strategic direction of the agency, how are we planning to execute projects that will redound to the benefit of our people?
Okay, so the projects that we choose, or the projects that are done by the agency, have varying initiators. So, for example, we have projects that are done in the 63 constituencies across the island that are initiated collaboratively between the Member of Parliament and our technical team on the ground, speaking, working with them to see what can actually make an impact in the community. Whereas we've identified that in terms of how these projects were chosen in the past, that the report says that maybe there could have been some additional steps to see, the feasibility of the project, having an actual feasibility report, having an impact assessment, where we've seen that there were some questions as to how they were initiated and how they were done, and some tidying up can take place. We've put in place steps to improve on that process, having gone through the audit process. But what we want to do now is actually be very strategic in terms of what we end up doing, communicating as well also with the members of parliament, because it's in their area and they know the needs of their people. So we don't necessarily want to take it up on ourselves to think that we know the constituencies better than the member of parliament. Right? But as I said before, we're looking at a collaborative approach, and we're trying to address the concerns that are highlighted, but make sure that, you know, the things get done to the benefit of the people in the different constituencies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Member Wilson, the guy first, and then Member Miller had put up his hand, but he has just asked me to ensure, as the Member of Parliament for South East St. Catherine, and he has a particular interest in a particular part, a project that he wants to ensure becomes a tourist attraction. But he said he would withdraw his submission.
Thank you, Sir Chair, for that. And no, but I'd like to expound on it, Sir Chair.
Not here. Member Guy.
Thank you, Chairman. All of us have that conflict of interest, all of us.
Chairman, there are two questions I have. I know the member had moved to the projects, but I just want to go back to one thing and just get clarity in my own mind. The employee who has been employed since 2005, for which a master's degree is required and is not enrolled, the ED said that bear in mind that they do not necessarily start at that particular role. Can you tell us what is the basic qualification of this person who is now your Chief Information Officer when they join the organization? And I have a part two. And whilst that is being done, ED, probably you could answer this one. The AG's audit of the projects was just 60 of the over 300, and there were some concerns about the 60. Are you able to tell this committee what is the status of the over 200 with the same concerns that the AG has about the 60? That was just a sampling that was done, right? What is the status of the others? Because certainly, if the AG had some concerns about 60 of 315 or whatever it was, the reality is that it would cause the organization to look at the remaining ones where the concern of the AG was expressed for the 60. Mm-hmm.
What I saw particularly as a concern was what I saw particularly as the concern was not doing a post-assessment of the projects outlined in their strategic intent and direction. So they had adequate documentation, it would appear, justifying why they were doing the projects, outlining the questions and the parameters that members of parliament had to meet and the projects had to meet. However, in the end, the concern was that they had not come back and done any assessment of how these projects really contributed to the community, what was the impact assessment. That wasn't being done at the time. And I note that their response was that going forward, 2022, 2023, TPDCO would be doing more quantitative measurements of outcome for the benefit of proving that the projects they embarked on are to the strong benefit of communities and ultimately Jamaica. So that was where I had made the connection. Mr. Mars, you could probably enlighten us further.
No, I agree with, member, I agree with your assessment. Thank you for that. The only thing I would add is that as part of the post-implementation assessment process, what it will enable us to do is to learn any shortcomings that we had with respect to a project that we did for the benefit of future projects. So, so we can tweak. We say, well, okay, this didn't work as we anticipated in Southeast St. Andrew. So when we're going to West Central, or when we're going to Clarendon Northern, right? And a similar project is being embarked on, then we're going to use the lessons learned from this area to make the project in the new era that much better.
Mr. Mars, a question as it relates to, I know she's still looking for your response, Member
She has
Guy.
found it.
Have you found it? But just a quick one on the projects. When we get the Spruce Up funding to do projects, it's wonderful. I can tell you for my constituency, it has made a massive difference. Literally tourists coming to spaces because we have gone with a Jamaica team in lifting and upgrading and beautifying key towns and squares and even the rivers where you have the stone and not much water. We have done a lot of beautification work, and it has attracted a lot of tourists. I see a lot of people coming to do their videos, their music videos and movies. What I would like to find out, if a part of your strategic approach as well is to maintain it. So the projects that you look right across Jamaica, outside of the 63 constituencies that we are funded, if TPDCO could be looking into spaces and say, okay, this project is one that we believe is going to be of massive impact for tourism, for the community later on, this will bring in a lot of income. And as such, strategically, we will start adding these projects to our permanent maintenance projects so that we as members of parliament can move on to another project in our constituency.
Member, unfortunately,
very desirable, however.
Our current policy is that any project that we do has to have a final owner. In some instances, that owner is, in some limited instances, the owner is the agency in question. In other instances, the owners have to be the municipal corporation, a community grouping, other ministries, other government entities, etc. But as part of the implementation process, as part of the planning process of the project, it has to have a final owner identified for us to be able to.
And we do wish we could do the maintenance component, member, but it's impossible because tourism is always trying to enhance something, working with partners to maximize the output. And so therefore, if we go into maintenance, just imagine all the roads that we do, the bridges, the community centers, all the, the attractions, we couldn't possibly provide maintenance for all of them as well. So we tried, that's why it's so important to ask about the sustainability element of every project. Who will take over when we're finished? Is the parish council? And many times the areas in which tourism work is not even our direct remit. We assist, we partner with, we enhance, and we'll continue to do that. But unfortunately, we can't do it all. We have to depend on you to use your great skills at negotiations with the other entities to get them to come on board and play their role.
All right. Member Morrison has been waiting, but Member Guy's question, I just want to ensure we answer it. Then I go to Member Morrison and then Member Williams.
Thank you,
I know, but you talk plenty. You have to give that up.
Thank you, Member Guy. I'm answering the question in respect of the CIO and his tenure. Right. So he started with the organization in 2005 in the capacity of the Information System Officer. He spent 12 years in that post and was promoted in 2017 to the business analyst.
Yeah, but what was his initial qualification for the ISO?
The same that he has now, diploma in... Right, he was qualified for that post, certificates in infrastructure and infrastructure repair and development. So he has those.
How is he performing?
Excellently. As a matter of fact, I want to point out that this is the same person who oversees the ICT infrastructure for every public body within the Ministry of Tourism. Excellently.
So what? Well, just a follow-up. So what are you saying? He came in with the required qualification at that point?
Qualification and experience for the post at that point.
At that point?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was considered, and in 2019 he was appointed to CIO.
I have a recommendation for that individual. My own son is in the field of artificial intelligence and loves IT. Very often they sort of self-qualify. They do so much studies on their own on the internet and seem to perform way beyond the paper sometimes says. Could you recommend to that individual that they find some programs online and train online and certify so that they can have the papers to go along with that high level of performance?
Thank you, Member. That we have been, and it's a continued effort on our part.
But to add to that, Art does certification, and I encourage TPDCO to have a conversation with them, because they come into my constituency and they certify mechanics and all different skills and so on. So I don't know if they do it for IT. And so you could check.
So even if they do it for IT, it wouldn't be at the level of having a master's degree. Right. So the recommendation to that individual, yes, you may have certificates, but everybody still open their eye wide at certificate. Certificate just means that you have improved your proficiency in a particular area. It's still a little tight. Having a master's degree, reading for a master's degree, actually speaks to your ability to be a lot more versatile in how you employ yourself and adapt right across the board. IT is a special area.
IT don't need masters.
I don't. However, have such a proficient, very well experienced, excellent performing employee. Go online, find and get the requisite certification for the area. And even for the other two persons that you indicated would have been doing certificates, do the same for them. It is not so hard to not necessarily go and sit down at a university or a college, but you can find programs online, take your time and get the necessary matriculation or written technical qualification that you need, the paper to say, I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, and hopefully from an institution that is a respected one.
All right, Member Morrison, then Member Williams. And then I'll come back to you, Member Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm looking here at this section, the 63 constituencies and the different projects. I want to put it to Madam AG that I do believe that TPDCO, I'm of the view that probably you need to work on your internal communication system, because When I think about my own constituency, TPDCO has been extremely thorough in ensuring that they follow the processes, especially when they are to do the site visits. One of my most forbidding terrain, when the officer came and he stayed the entire course, and we were questioned about this very thing, the linkage between the project and the value to the tourism sector. We in Northeastern St. Catherine, Madam AG, we were hard pressed to supply this very information, right? So we did not get a free pass here. So in fact, I am actually surprised that this was one of the findings. And so, very cheekily, I am going to suggest to TPDCO, you have this information because you ferreted it from every member of parliament. So probably it was an internal breakdown that occurred there in supplying this information. And the reason, Member Holness, I'm saying this, I don't want TPDCO to respond by making the system even more onerous for members of parliament. At all. I don't want you to go back and say that, listen, we are now going to put this system in place that will be so difficult to effectively respond. We are putting it to the AG that TPDCO, as far as members of parliament as we, and I'm talking for most of us, they have been on the ball. We have to do the project document properly. We have to do everything. They send the people in the field, and and the money they dot every I and cross the T's. The money not going to be paid out just like that until TPDCO is satisfied. So maybe it's just a completion certificate.
No,
I don't know.
Member Morrison, I think you missed something. I actually admitted we do a PhD as members of parliament in putting together our project documents. They are fine in that regard. That was the point I was making. The AG didn't have a concern about them ensuring that all the necessary documentation, justification exists for the projects. What was happening to TPDCO is after the projects were completed, some of those projects, they didn't have quantitative analysis of how it benefited the communities. So it's from that end that they now need to improve their justification post-project.
And Member Holness, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. No, it's not for us. So what I'm saying, we don't want TPDCO to go off now and make the system more onerous for us.
All right, Member Williams, and I would just hold on, members, Member Williams, and I just encourage the members. I know every member would want some more than the 3 million that you allocate, right? But every member would want some more. But Member Williams has been holding for a long time.
P.S. I just want my phone of flesh. I have not done
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I sat and listened, and Madam Permanent Secretary and Mr. Mars, newly appointed Executive Director, I have noted the responses and the undertakings given to remedy the shortfalls or the weaknesses where they are, especially in relation to financial reporting and your HR issues, which a lot of organizations and entities have these days. You know, it poses a challenge, but we appreciate the undertaking given to correct that and strengthen your HR department in that regard. Now, I just want to say in relation to projects that, you know, and it may be a little outside of the terms of reference, but I want to use this opportunity to express my appreciation for TPDCO's, and that is why TPDCO's involvement in Central Kingston. And I tell you why, and this is why it is important for you to strengthen your organization and, you know, eliminate your weaknesses, because you are an entity that play a significant supporting role to MPs. I'm a young MP, relatively young in terms of being elected in the recent election. And so far, the help that TPDCO has given me is tremendous. Yes, and I will tell you, and don't get envious. Yes, you can all envy me. The Raytown fishing village, yes, the Raytown fishing village, no, it's the same spruce up that you all have gotten. It's just that I have used mine in a, well, in a way that has impacted Central Kingston. I regard Central Kingston as a gateway and the face of Kingston. And when I look at the help you have given me at the Raytown fishing village and that South Camp Road entrance from the airport into Kingston, you have helped me to sanitize that area and establish a mural there. And I'm saying I am indeed indebted, and I have other projects going on. And I just want to say, continue your good work, strengthen your organization, because you play a very critical role in the development of our communities. My residents are beaming with pride at the Raytown Fishing Village. I went there in Easter to buy fish, and the people are very elated and happy about the development and the improvement. And I can tell you that South Camp Road is looking spectacular, and it has instilled a sense of pride in the residents and the visitors. I've had visitors who have come in, family members who said, wow, this is looking good. In tandem with there is the flag circle entering Kingston, and when you come around onto South Camp Road, it has improved significantly. I want to thank TPDCO. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam, Mr. Chair.
Let me just say, before Member Wilson comes, endorsements don't mean you get more money for your constituency. All right? So I'll invite Member Wilson. I don't know if it's another endorsement. He legitimately can say he comes from a tourism area. Yes. Right? But let me remember Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and for the warning. And I want to add my voice for whatever value it's worth. TPDCO has done tremendously well for Negril. And the people of Westmoreland is quite pleased with the work that have been done by TPDCO. And as being a new MP as well, and I want to also reaffirm what Member Morrison said in terms of the difficulty that you guys put me through to get those funds. I really don't want it to be any more difficult. I mean, I want the AG to have this on record that you guys are quite stringent in how you apply, especially the linkages part. We have to demonstrate as MPs how this contributes to tourists and tourism. And I think it's very positive. It shows a higher level of governance and the quality of work of TPDCO and the Ministry of Tourism. So, whatever internal review that you guys are going to look at, don't make it more difficult. And to go specifically to the post-project assessment, I've worked in project management in my previous life, and it is something quite difficult because it actually expands the scope of the project, and it also expands the budget of the project. Because you can have post-assessment of projects in 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, and this comes at an additional cost. So it's something that I see you make note that you'll try to implement it. But again, that would also affect budgetary constraints, because I've been in that situation where people call me and said, listen, we did the project a year ago, how has it been performing? And you have to find the resources and the manpower and financial resources to send people out there to actually do surveys and other form of assessment to actually give a long-term impact. Right, so I want to mention that. And then from the overall project report that I've seen so far, being a new member of PAC, I've seen reports that shows millions missing and unaccounted for and trailing somewhere on the verges. We didn't see that, and I want to point that out and say that that was a very, very good. The AG generally has a keen eye to pick up these things, and the fact that we are not seeing any wide-scale things slipping off some ridges somewhere, it's a testimony that you guys are doing fantastically well, and it goes again to, the staffing. No, listen, hold on. And it goes towards the staffing, and it's not expected, but as I said, as a new MP and a new member of PAC, I've seen other reports where we are here scratching our heads. Well, especially me, I'm speaking for myself now. And, here it's more a procedural thing where I think you guys just have to get the alignment right. So I want to say great performance on that. But specifically to the post-project assessment, if you are going to take that on, it has tremendous cost implication, especially how long you're going to look at that review process. All right, thank you.
I will just use this opportunity to disagree with my dear colleague and member. I actually did not think for a moment about any malfeasance, corruption, misappropriation of funds. It actually happens in the very rare case, and so I had zero expectation. So I'm not surprised that nothing came from the AG in that regard. When it does, it is usually not the norm. Thank you, members.
Member Sibley's.
Yes, Chair, it is with regret that I can't massage the egos of the members of TPDCO, but I am hoping, I'm still hopeful, Chair, that come the next time they are brought before us, I can join my colleagues in saying how wonderful they are to them, and the fact that persons can drive around their constituency and see TPDCO stamp all over. I am hopeful, I am very hopeful that in the near future that I too will be able to say these glorious, wonderful things about TPDCO. The most I can say is I encourage you to continue your good work within the bigger picture of tourism for Jamaica. Notwithstanding that you have not reached Clarendon Northern in such a way as yet, I still want to congratulate you. Thank you.
And I would say finally, the man from Mobile can't be left out. The man from Back Road want to speak too? All right, members, let's keep it to the questions, but Member Clark and then Member Miller.
I won't pose a question at this time, Mr. Chairman. What I would do, though, is to say to the team that is here from the Tourism Department that I am from the Frank and speak on behalf of my other 4 colleagues who are not here with us today, that you have been doing a tremendous amount of work where we are concerned. We just have to say we appreciate it on behalf of the resident, and that you continue to recognize that Montego Bay is the #1 part or sector of tourism that makes it happen.
All right, the Member Miller, I'm sure Member Witter soon coming from the farming area of St. Elizabeth. But members, make we try and wrap this up.
Yes, man, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, Sir Chair. Just sufficing to say that I could not leave here without advising the team, the hard-working team of TPDCO, to strategically and think about Southeast St. Catherine, because it's soon to be the 15th parish, and there is a pregnancy of opportunity on that side.
Thank you very much,
tourism.
member. Thank you very much, member.
No, on a serious note, for tourism, because it's an area that can be the entertainment and the tourism hub of that side. So if the team can really look strongly in that regard where that is concerned.
Member Miller, you need to go and have a discussion with the Minister of Tourism and keep it right there. We are not going to give you any further endorsements. I am going to turn over to the chairman to thank you for being here today, because we don't seem to have any more questions
on the prompt or on the reports. If there are no others, let me thank the team from TPDCO for being here. Let me thank the Auditor General's team and the Ministry of Finance. Our next meeting is the May 24th, where we will look at the Auditor General's special report on Jamaica Customs Agency, bunkering operations and bonded warehouse. That is 3 weeks from today. We couldn't meet May 24th. We can't meet next week or the week after because the Parliament is booked for other committee meetings. So could I have a motion for adjournment? Member Holness, seconded by Member Wilson. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. And you know, we thank the AG for pointing out the areas of weakness. It's a very, very hard-working team, and we'll do better in those areas. And we have no intention of coming back here, AG. And so you will see the outcome on the ground, not in this chair, not from this chair. Thank you. Yes, sir. I'm fine.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. If you think you've been exposed